Aloha. Oh, wrong venue. Okay, sorry. Anyway, I want to welcome everybody to our Democratic Assembly Candidates Forum for the Democratic Club of Southern Sonoma County. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'd like to first thank the Boys and Girls Club for letting us use their game room again. So soon the games will begin. And I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have the 10th AD Assembly District. Evelyn Wu, the chair, is here. And we'll have a follow-up forum to this on Wednesday the 25th, 7 p.m. Over at the Dominican University. Anything else? Free and open to the public. And there's flyers available over there on the back desk. As well as on that night, Wednesday the 25th, is our congressional forum over at the Santa Rosa Democratic Club, Santa Rosa Veterans Building. So hope you can party hop from the Assembly Forum to the Congressional Forum. Next, I'd like to introduce Mike Healy, Councilman from Petaluma. Where are you? Behind. You're hiding. And he will do the welcome from Petaluma, and then we'll get started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Therese, and welcome to Petaluma, as she said, on behalf of the city. I'd just like to introduce my one colleague from the Petaluma City Council who is here, Gabe Kearney. Gabe. And I'm particularly pleased that Leroy Lounibos agreed to be the moderator this evening. Leroy is a retired attorney who has gone on to even bigger and better things as a civics teacher at Casa Grande High School. And he has been moderating candidates forums for Petaluma City Council and Mayor of Petaluma for longer than I can remember, and I've been doing this for a while. So he's very capable, you're in good hands, and you should enjoy the evening. And I would just say one thing. Is it a 3-minute time limit tonight?
It varies.
It'll vary. When it's a 3-minute time period, for instance, and Wes will be keeping a very close eye on that, it may seem like a long time to you, but if you're the candidate and you're trying to cram all your thoughts into those 3 minutes, it just flies by. So listen very carefully. They're trying to get a lot of information in there for you. And with that, Leroy.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leroy. I also, I did want to make sure that Petaluma Community Access gets recognized. John Bertucci, thank you for being here. I think the Press Democrat will be here shortly if they aren't here yet. And Jim Peterson, thank you so much for doing the sound again for me. And thank you, Leroy Lounibos, for moderating.
Well, it's entirely my pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. John has a tape going there, and it's going to run out in about an hour. And he's going to start waving his arms at me, and we'll take a slight pause for him to change the tape when that happens. We want to make sure that we record this for history, since I am a history teacher. Now, the format tonight, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of broken down into 3 segments. The first segment will be individual opening statements from each of the candidates. They are sitting in order of a manner in which they drew straws or drew their name out of a hat. I'm not too sure how it was, but it was a cup. All right. Was it an empty cup? No. Okay. So the number 1 questioner is immediately, or questioner candidate is immediately to my left, Mr. Allen, and we'll proceed with him in a moment with opening presentations. But after we do the opening presentations, we will do the question session. And we're hoping that all of you will take advantage of writing out questions for the candidates. I have a committee behind me and around me that will be organizing those written questions, And if there's repetitious questions, we'll make sure that we don't ask the same question twice. Each candidate will be asked the same question in a different type of order, which we've designed. And then finally, the final session is the closing statements. In the closing statements, the topic would be how the candidate will work with the current state legislature to achieve their goals. Let me tell you what the time limits are, and then we'll get started. On the opening statements, the time limit for each candidate is 2 minutes, and we're hoping that they will indicate to you why they're running for the Assembly, what issues will be their top priority. The answers to the questions that I will give to them by way of your cards will require just 1 minute. And we'd like to keep everybody to that time because we'd like to get as much questioning in as possible. Then finally, the closing statements, that will also be 1 minute. Okay, does everybody understand? Okay, I'm checking for understanding. That's what we do in a classroom now. Yes? No, 1 minute. Yeah, yeah. Did we cut it back? Yeah. Oh, let me double check. I was your daughter's speech teacher. What's her name? Who? Of course I was. Yeah, would I give her an A? Yeah, I do. Sure I did. Mr. Healy said that I'm a civics teacher. Actually, right now I'm teaching legal studies and world history. And while at Casa Grande High School, I've taught econ, government, public speaking, sociology, U.S. history, legal studies, and world history, all in 6 years, okay? So let me just double check that. I may, it's 2 minutes, yeah, yeah. There we go. Let me just change that. Okay. Mr. Allen, would you please introduce yourself and address the audience?
Can you see me and hear me? Great. Okay, my name is Michael Allen. I'm presently in the Assembly. I won my race back in 2010. It's been my honor and privilege to serve for the last 16 months in the Assembly. I serve on the Budget Committee. I serve on Business and Professions. I serve on the Labor Committee. I serve on the Social Security and Pension Committee. I was appointed to the Conference Committee on Pensions. In my first month in office, I was voted by my colleagues to be the Assistant Majority Leader. So I'm very proud of the fact that among the leaders in the Assembly, I was chosen to be on leadership to try to work with the Assembly, the Senate, and the citizens of California to do something about the $28 billion deficit we faced when I first took office. The work is not finished. I want to go back and continue it. We still have something like a $9 billion deficit. I hope all of you tonight sign the governor's initiative. I'm very proud of the fact that I was recently endorsed to be the candidate for the Democratic endorsement. I was recently endorsed by the Sierra Club and the State Federation of Labor. The main things I want to accomplish is to get us sufficient revenue so that we don't continue harming our kids. We are failing in the area of education, whether it's at the K through 12 level or through our colleges. And one of the things that we'll talk about later on this evening is I'm very devoted to the fact of getting our expenses under control, but also getting us the revenue that we need, because we simply cannot cut our way out of the problems that we have. And so I look forward to the presentation tonight, and I'll keep it to under 2 minutes, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong, would you make your opening statement?
Good evening. My name is Connie Wong, and I'm your neighbor from Corte Madera. I've been a resident of Marin since 1977. I'm a mother of a very unique child who attends our public schools. I'm also an active realtor in Marin. And finally, I've been a military officer for the last 18 years, and I'm still serving in the California National Guard. And the reason why I'm running is because for the last 5 years, I've watched the military violate every single equal and civil rights law there is, and I'm tired of it. So I'm here to ask that you, when the time comes, vote for government transparency and accountability, because we don't have it right now. So that's my first issue. My second issue is, like Assemblyman Allen said here, it was $26 billion the other day. Now you're saying it's 28. So, okay, so we're $28 billion in debt, and we're continuing to spiral into bankruptcy. And so the way we should fix that is a state-owned bank or a county-owned bank. All I have to say is that everyone should, when you guys go home, Google Bank of North Dakota. Bank of North Dakota. They're the only state in the union that has stayed in the black throughout the recession. And actually, last year, they gave back $400 million to their citizens in income tax and property tax cuts. How many of you would like a tax cut? Raise your hand. Thank you. Bank of North Dakota, please. And then my final issue. Oh,
sorry, wrong thing.
Oh. Okay. And okay, so my final issue is fuel cell technology. We are killing ourselves, or environment, I should say. We are killing ourselves with all the pollution that we create from driving our vehicles. The other day, I went to the hydrogen dedication ceremony for the AC Transit. Anyway, fuel cell technology. The next time you buy a vehicle, do not buy another car that consumes gasoline. Please buy a fuel cell vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Gunderson.
Yeah, hi. My name is Dr. Christian Gunderson. Basically, there's two reasons why I'm running. As a doctor for 26 years, chiropractor, one of the greatest joys of my life is basically getting people out of pain. It's fun. I enjoy it. And guess what? California is in a lot of pain. My goal is to get California out of pain. If you're a good chiropractor or a good doctor and you can help maybe 10 to 20,000 people in your career, that's a really good career. But if a healer goes to Sacramento and with one good vision or stop one bad law, we can turn around and help 37 million people. So that's the primary reason I'm running. I'm running as a doctor, as a healer. Second reason I'm running is I got pissed off. I got angry. I got frustrated at looking at professional politicians spend more time and energy basically going back and forth, arguing about who's right, who's wrong, without actually creating any solutions. I mean, how many times have you watched TV and somebody has turned around and says, well, I did it for the good of the party, or I did it for the good of whatever group I belong to? You know, when is it, well, I did it for the good of the people who actually elected me? It doesn't happen that much anymore. This needs to change, and this is one of the reasons why I would like people to vote for me. As far as issues, education. I'm solution-orientated. One of the things that I'd like to do is turn around and cap credit card rates at 20%, have 25% of that money of credit card fees go to local education. That one idea would raise billions of dollars like that. Second idea, health. Our meds are some of the highest in the world. They cost a lot of money. You got a choice if you need medication to live until tomorrow. Not take it and get sick, pay really expensive prices, or go online and buy something that you don't know how good it is. One of my ideas is to turn around and have California certified Canadian websites. That way you go online, you save 50 to 80 to 90% off the price, and you know it's the exact same thing as walking across the street to your local drugstore. And I better stop.
I'm sorry. Listen, I didn't know the mic was on.
That's okay.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine, could you make your opening statement?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening. Thank all of you for joining us this evening. I'm Marc Levine. I'm running for Assembly because, quite frankly, Sacramento is broken. Sacramento is in the stranglehold of special interests. We need to have someone with local experience representing our communities to make sure that we have an authentic voice in the Capitol, to make sure that our local concerns are represented. My local experience includes serving on the San Rafael City Council. I also, of course, have been fortunate to represent Sonoma on the executive board of the California Democratic Party. That local experience means that in the past few years, I've actually been able to create policies in the areas of clean energy that have been pioneering in our state. Been able to struggle on very challenging issues like creating sustainable pension reform, partnering with our local school districts to see how our city and the resources of our community can help with kindergarten preparedness, which is probably the best way to track future progress that would lead to college graduation. And quite frankly, in my career, in the intersection of technology and philanthropy, I've worked with both the corporate sector and the nonprofit sector to bring people together to create innovative solutions, which is what I will be bringing with me to Sacramento. In this race, we see a power play by Sacramento power brokers who want to take the choice of who our representative is and make it for us. And all of us here at this table have the right to say, I want to be a part of helping our community to run and represent this district. Until we break apart from the status quo in Sacramento, we will not be able to address fundamental issues and challenges that will lead to California's success, like education, like clean energy development, like putting our economy on the right track. What I'll be doing in the assembly is, in fact, breaking away from the special interest, standing up to a lot of the things that have stopped us from breaking the status quo and moving forward. My wife, Wendy, and I are raising our children here. My daughter's 3, my son is 5. We are incredibly hopeful for our future. I am hopeful for the North Bay and for the Golden State. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Hey, folks.
Mr. Brown.
I'm Alex Easton Brown. I'm president of Marin United Taxpayers. I'm the California coordinator for 99% Declaration. We're having a constitutional convention in Philadelphia on July 4th. We call it Constitutional Convention 2.0. I want to know what's happened in the Democratic Party. Before Reagan, we were proud to represent and fight for the weakest and poorest members of society. Since Clinton, we've turned ourselves into a wimpy center-right party. It's no wonder the independents have abandoned us like we're the sinking Titanic. Obama climbed into bed with Wall Street, selling out the middle class, and let the Pentagon and CIA push him into these illegal wars. The Democratic Party has left those of us on the left stranded and ignored, and yet we are the base of this party. The Democratic lawmakers, their pockets stuffed full of corporate cash, have stupidly stood by while Obama let the Wall Street borrow money from the Fed at 0% interest to speculate on oil futures, adding $1 onto the price of gas. A $16 trillion giveaway that the biggest banks, even foreign banks, can feast on. An amount greater than all the mortgages in America combined. Trillions to the bank, while 4 million families lost their homes, and 11 million are about to. Roosevelt refinanced tens of thousands of homes, put millions to work, built 650,000 miles of highway, 124,000 bridges, 8,000 parks, 18,000 playgrounds, and 125,000 public buildings. Obama's failure is not that these programs don't work, but that they haven't been tried. The living wage in the Bay Area is over $20 an hour. The minimum wage, if kept pace with CEO pay, would be $23 an hour. France pays $13 an hour. Australia, $16 an hour. The legalized bribery of campaign contributions has destroyed the Democratic Party and made us a little different than the Republicans.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We come now to the question part of the evening. I have a pile of questions in front of me. Doesn't mean that's the only ones. If you have questions, make sure you write them down and somebody will pick them up. I see there's some in the audience already. This part of the session, I'm going to start with a particular candidate. I'm going to ask the question, then I'm going to ask the question. The same question will be answered in a particular order that we've agreed upon in advance. The answers are limited to 1 minute, and I want to, although I don't think you need to be told this, I want to make sure that there's no personal attacks. We're here to hear logic. We're not here to try to win an argument by attacking the personality of somebody. And because of that admonition, I want you to know that I have been empowered as the moderator of this session to personally admonish anybody who engages in personal attacks. I want us all to be friendly. You're all one big family here, although families sometimes quarrel. Tonight, hold that off. Let's listen for the logic and the persuasiveness of the answers to this question rather than ad hominem attacks. This is sort of what I tell my students too. And yes, it does. And they have some very strong opinions because of that, of what they read in the newspaper about what politicians say. So they're watching you, they're listening, and they'll be voting in a couple of years. My students. Okay. We're gonna start the questioning with Ms. Wong. And the first question is, what is your plan for pension reform?
My plan, again, is simply to advocate for a state-owned bank or a county-owned bank. North Dakota did that. They created their own banking where basically they took their pension money that they collect from all the employees. They've taken it out of Wall Street, well, not all of it, but they've invested it in themselves. And they've made, last year they earned $62 million. Now, understand North Dakota is only 1/17 of us. So imagine how much money we could make if we took that money out of Wall Street and invested in us. They invest the money in real estate within their own state. They invest their money in our own infrastructure. They lend our government money for infrastructure at 0 interest rate. By doing that, we avoid the $7 billion of interest that we owe. And so extending ourselves a line of credit helps tremendously. So pension funds, stop.
Thank you, Ms. Wong.
Sorry.
Dr. Christensen, could you answer that question?
I'm for pension reform. I agree with Governor Brown that we need to do something. I agree with Sonoma County. I agree with Marin. One of the things that surprised me the most about being a candidate is going to the various city managers, county managers, and basically say, hey, what's going on with the pensions? The thing about our area is we're very proactive in actually doing something. And it's really grateful to take a look at what's going on in our local area and basically go, this needs to be statewide. Our governments are really trying to do something profound by tackling a problem that is a ticking time bomb for the people of California. We have to do something. We can't close our eyes. We can't put it off. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We actually have to do something. And like I said before, Marin is really good at solving problems. Sonoma County is really good at solving problems. We need to continue that. We have to take our vision, our passion to Sacramento, not the other way around. We have an 86% approval rate. Guess what? Sacramento has a 19. Do we really want to go to Sacramento and say, hey, teach us, show us? No. We want to go to Sacramento and basically say, we know how to solve problems. We know how to take care of the issues. We got pension problems, we got budget problems. You need to listen to the people who are actually living it, actually doing it, and coming up with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine.
Yeah, thank you very much. I represented San Rafael on the Marin County Ad Hoc Pension Reform Committee. At the time, I felt like I was taking one for the team by signing up for that job. But what we did was we studied all of the different pension tiers that we have in the county and in other systems and looked at best practices and built a toolkit of things that we could do for each of our jurisdictions to create sustainable pension reform. I took the lessons back from that committee to San Rafael, and we actually did develop a second tier of more sustainable pensions that we negotiated with our bargaining units around the collective bargaining table. It was a very positive experience. It wasn't like pulling teeth on the management side or on the labor side. And we really worked together to find a system that worked well for our city, that would save money long term so that we could sustain the level of services that our residents expect, but also make sure that there is security in retirement for our employees. Many of us might not know, but city employees and often state employees as well don't receive Social Security. And so some component of pension reform needs to make sure that the work that our employees are doing is recognized, that they have a secure retirement in the future, but it has to be sustainable so we can afford to employ them long-term and provide the services that our communities expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown.
Yes. Pension reform, there's two aspects, what we can do immediately with the plans and what I feel has to be done in the long term. Immediately, we can have employees pay at least 8% into their plan. And also, I think that pensions should be limited to about 60% of one's earnings with a max of $100,000. Otherwise, the pensions become pensions of the rich and famous. Like, take Mansourian, the Marin Public Works guy who heads SMART, is making $500,000 off his pension. Pension should be a safety net like Social Security, not a giveaway or a fat reward. I don't believe in this idea of hiring the brightest and the best. I'm happy to hire the 60 percentile person to do government work because it is government work. Right? That's the way it goes. You know, this is not rocket science. Structurally, we need to augment our bankruptcy laws so that we can use structured bankruptcy to renegotiate the pensions of the rich and famous, the contracts that people hold up and say these cannot be violated. Any contract can be violated. Ask the auto workers in Detroit. There's nothing that we can't do if we want to do it and be bold enough. So that's structured bankruptcies and renegotiated pensions is a way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen.
Yes, I volunteered to be on the pension committee. That's made up of 3 senators and 3 from the assembly. And the short answer is that probably you'll see in June or July a response coming out from the legislature responsive to the governor's proposal. As I've told most people, it's going to be recognizable. It's going to be different in some of the details because you have to remember that you have PERS, the 37 Act, and STRS. They're all different. STRS is female dominated. Some of the pension systems are under Social Security, some are not. There's the issue of age and whether the age of retirement should be tied to Social Security. Is that appropriate for jobs that are very strenuous or public safety jobs where in fact you might end up having people take public safety disability retirement, which actually would drive up costs? It's a complicated issue. But what I'm telling people is that the legislature recognizes that unless we can make our pension systems sustainable, that there's going to be great difficulty in getting the public engaged to support new revenues, taxes, if they don't feel like we're taking care of the very basics. And so one of the biggest issues in Sacramento this year is pension reform, coupled with the revenues we need for our educational system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Now it's time for the next question, which I'm going to address to Dr. Gunderson. The question is, examples of Sonoma and Marin cooperation are water supply and smart rail. What other forms of cooperation could you propose to bring to the two together?
It's on? Okay. Thank you. As far as cooperation, schools, for example. Right now we have 46 different school districts here in our area. We got 19 down in Marin. We should be able to basically connect with each other and decrease the amount of school districts that we have. It would cut overhead and basically have more money go to the various organizations. More money go to the teachers, more money go into the students. Water is also a good one. Smart rail, I'd like to see that extended. I'd like to see it extended all the way down to Larkspur. I like smart rail. I think it's a good idea. Water, I would have liked to see Marin turn around and build the water plant. An extra 5 million gallons a day for water down there. Be kind of nice to have on a dry day. So there's a lot of different ways of connecting with each county. Each one is unique. Each one has a different vision and different hope. We need to figure out what the best way, what the most balanced way is to create jobs and to balance out the environment. It's very important to communicate. It's very important to talk. And it's very important to share visions. Some are equal, and guess what? Some are a little bit different. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Anytime you need that, don't hesitate to ask. Examples of Sonoma and Marin cooperation are water supply and smart rail. What other forms of cooperation could you propose to bring the two together, the two counties together?
Yeah, this is a great question. As someone involved in local government, we've been struggling to find shared service opportunities so that we can benefit from the knowledge base that we have during a period of scarce resources. And in Marin County, we've seen a lot of fire regionalization, some consolidation, but one example is sharing a battalion chief between two jurisdictions is pretty simple and doesn't require too much. But I think on the grander scale, how can a member of the state legislature help encourage that type of shared service and cooperation? How do we foster that, that ethic between the communities so that we can benefit from scale, but also retain the local control that our communities appreciate so much and value so much? And that's where I would try to be making those types of connections. We also have to look at the economy. We've seen in Marin the unfortunate loss of the Lucasfilm development at Grady Ranch, and maybe it will be a neighboring community's benefit. And is there a way for leaders in the legislature help ease that path so that if there's one area of the region in the North Bay that won't benefit from that, that we could keep that job base local and encourage that type of partnership so that it's not one jurisdiction's loss and another one's gain. It's actually a benefit for the region, as we see with both SMART, with the transportation and bike corridor, that there's a lot of potential for those types of partnerships on the economy side as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown?
Yes. The topographically and in terms of geography, southern Sonoma and Marin aren't that much different. When I drive home on D Street to my house in Lagunitas, there's no real difference in terrain. It's a beautiful open space, rolling grassy hills. I was against bringing Russian River water down to Marin because it was just a ploy by developers to build out more in Marin using Russian River water, which I know is not permanent, does not have permanent availability. I was against SMART, not because I'm against trains, I love trains, but it was underfunded. They knew they needed a half-cent sales tax, and yet they went for the quarter-cent because they knew the voters wouldn't go for a half-cent. They're not going to have the ridership to pay for itself. It'll probably become just another roadside attraction. I like the idea of sharing, and I like the idea of consolidation. Southern Sonoma and Marin are a lot better fit than Marin was with San Francisco. And I'm looking forward to working with the people in this district.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen?
For those of you who don't know, my background is I was a psychiatric nurse, worked for the crisis clinic for Sonoma County, became an attorney. Almost all my background has been in mediation, negotiation, and collaboration. And so two areas that I see right away that we could really work between Marin and Sonoma is one is trying to protect agriculture, our food supply, our local food supply, and really going more local in terms of our two counties. I think it's a very exciting opportunity. Another great opportunity is there's a lot of what I call energy envy between the two counties. Sonoma County looks south and sees the Marin Energy Authority and sees it as very exciting. Marin looks north and sees the, I was one of the co-founders of Solar Sonoma, and you have the whole PACE program, the Energy Independence Program, where we're doing retrofits. So in the area of energy, there's a lot of possibilities for synergy, creativity. So in those two areas alone, that'd be a great avenue for collaboration. And I'd also like to mention one of the roles someone should be doing in the Assembly is being a convener to try to resolve local disputes and get people talking to one another who might not be comfortable being in the same room. And that's something I'm very good at doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong?
I too like the idea of sharing and conserving resources. Particular focus, I would say, I don't have one. All I know is that if whatever whatever area you specialize in, you ought to be going into the other counties around you, obviously to Sonoma, and having conferences and meetings to come out with best practices and sharing in that manner. That way, every knowledge is shared and resources are conserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Now we're going to turn to our third question, a question dear to my heart. What is your stance on AB 1208 regarding trial court administrative funding? And the question is addressed to Mr. Levine, first of all.
Yeah, we have been in an era of budget cuts, unfortunately. And that means that almost every part of government has been touched by that, including the legal system. And so people's efforts to have justice, have their trials be heard, have been lengthened, and access to the court system's been drawn out over a long period of time. One of the solutions to doing that is restoring trust in the legislature and in government. And when we're able to break away from the fighting that we have in Sacramento, stop the gridlock that we have, if we're able to be honest with the residents and the voters about what we're doing, we're going to have a better time, an easier time, raising the revenues, like the governor's proposal that will be on the ballot in November. When we're able to provide trust from the voters in the legislature's ability to do something responsible with their money, they will be more likely to vote for those revenue increases. And we'll be able to fund education or our court systems at a level that unfortunately we've only been cutting the past few years.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown.
I don't know anything about this bill, but I can say something about justice and money. You go down in the courtroom any day, Marin Civic Center, and you see the poorest and weakest and less privileged people in the county being pulled before the judge and money extracted from them, people who can least afford it, in terms of fines. Then their fines are put off. If they don't make that payment, they're back in jail. This is a continuous vicious cycle. And what's this really do? This money goes to fund the county and the cities. It's just a way of making money. There's no justice there to speak of. It's just a factory that eats the poorest and the weakest in society.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen.
When 1208 came before the Assembly, I voted for it, and I voted for it for the purpose of getting the bill over to the Senate side so that the Senate Judiciary Committee could sit down with the Chief Justice and talk about the fact that we spent over $500 million on a computer system that still is not working for the courts. And that at a time when we're spending huge amounts of money on IT and we're closing down access to justice, we felt that was the best way to encourage a conversation. The judges among themselves, some counties they're not in agreement. We felt that by at least giving the bill the chance to go to the Senate and have a discussion with the Judiciary Committee and the Chief Justice, she came before us, gave a very conciliatory speech about our need to work together. And shortly thereafter, they decided to discontinue the IT project. Although many people liked it, it still was going to be another $700 million with no end in sight in terms of its utility, and try to devote the amount of resources we do have presently to keeping courthouses open and access to justice open. But we are really doing ourselves a disservice because we have cut back something like $450 million in the last couple of years even with the court system. It's a huge problem because if we don't have access to justice, it's one of the fundamental things we should be doing in society.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong?
I don't believe in budget cuts, and I don't believe in taxing you and me where we work too hard for this, for our livelihoods here. What I do believe in is, again, the state or county-owned bank. If you have this bank, you'll make enough money to cover all these social programs that are being cut. Education. How many of you knew that we are number 47 in education, right? Right? Yeah? We're number 1 in prisons. Did you know that? That's disgusting. So again, we gotta get a bank like the Bank of North Dakota, and it will generate profits to cover our expenses, to cover our education programs, to cover these budget cuts for the court system, to cover the roads. Sonoma is the worst, has the worst roads, I think, in the Bay Area. That money will improve your roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson.
What's the question again?
Let me read it again. What is your stance on AB 1208 regarding trial court administrative funding?
I'm not sure about the specific bill itself, but as far as funding for courts, it's important. One of the things I would like to see is the amount of, when you go basically for small claims, I'd like to see that increased. I would like to basically see more participation of individuals be able to go to court and basically say, here's my issue, and have it solved by a judge right away instead of being pushed off. May put a lot of lawyers out of business, but as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. I don't mind that. Another thing I'd like to do is I would like to see that expanded. As a doctor of chiropractic, dealing with insurances, they're basically your enemy, the insurance companies. I would like to expand that where if a third person can turn around and sue a insurance company on behalf of a patient, guess what? That would solve a lot of malpractice. That would solve a lot of lawsuits where somebody owes $10,000, $15,000 and they have to go to and get a lawsuit to get that paid through an insurance company. There's a lot of different ways of creating solutions. I'm very solution orientated. The nice thing about California, the nice thing about our area, is there's a lot of smart people here who have decent solutions. They have visions. They have know-how. The question is, who's going to listen? I will. I want to. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I don't mind referring out patients who need referring out. I don't mind asking a second opinion. It's really important if somebody comes in and it's like, I don't know how to treat that. Guess what? There's a guy down the street that does. Let me find that. Let me help that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. The next question, and this will be addressed to Mr. Brown. A big issue in the papers in the past 10 days is the signed compact by the governor's office regarding the casino. There's concerns about traffic, impact on traffic. There's valid concerns about impact upon the water supply. The state legislature has to ratify this compact. How would you vote on this ratification?
Yes, I would vote against it. I'm against the Indian gaming casinos. My wife is born on an Indian reservation in New York State, even though she's Danish. They put a casino in a couple years ago, and they have crime, a blight, drug addiction, all the negatives that a small town was hoping to avoid. Gambling and crime go together. People that gamble get addicted to it. It destroys families. It's worse than alcohol and drugs as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, could you answer that question?
I think it's important to remind the public that the public actually voted this in a number of years ago, so we're responding to something that the public decided they wanted to do. My answer would be is that it's well known. They voted to have, no, excuse me, they voted statewide to have allow for Indian casinos in California, Indian gaming. That's what I'm referring to. I'm just telling
we're not here to engage in a dialogue. If you have a question or a comment, write it down, and I'll be sure that we direct it to it. But let's maintain some order. I don't want to sound like a judge, but we've got to do this. Thank you.
It's well known that I have supported this project over the years, the last 8 or 9 years, and my involvement was with it when I found out about it that they were going to build a casino on the wetlands, and my involvement was to get them to not build out in undeveloped areas, but to have it brought into a city. Fortunately, they were able to find Rohnert Park to take them in. So my support for the project now will lead to whether I will essentially vote yes for the compact. 3 of the legislators have said they want to take information in. That's Wes Chesborough, myself, and Noreen Evans. So my position on that is that I know a letter is coming from the city of Petaluma. We'll be here from the Board of Supervisors. We'll hear from the city of Rohnert Park and other interested parties. And then we'll vote on the compact. The public should know this, whether they like it or not, that probably even if every legislator in the North Coast voted against the project, that it will probably be ratified. There's only been one that has not been ratified. My job is to, it's a 290-page document, is to absorb it and understand it before I take a position.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong?
I was a small business person for 2 years. I had a little indoor inflatable zone in San Anselmo. So I know how hard it is to run a business. So I'm pro-business, but I'm also pro-environment. I think we need to have balance before we decide whether or not to have this casino. I'm not opposed to casinos. My father loves to gamble, and him and my mother go often. So please don't judge all gamblers. But I would abstain this round.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson.
As far as casinos are concerned, my knee-jerk reaction is I'm for it. Sonoma County needs business. Sonoma County needs jobs. They may not be the best jobs, but guess what? They're jobs. And we also need the revenue that the casinos bring in. After talking to Donna, sitting right there, she brought up a lot of really good points that need to be addressed, that need to be concerned, including the water rights, including the ability to basically take any agreement that the casinos make and basically throw it out the window once it gets passed and considered, okay, well, federal, federal, under federal law now, we don't have to obey the state law. So my goal is to find solutions. My goal is to find understanding. I want to hear from everybody. I want to hear the yes, the no, and the maybe. This is why I'm running. I am not here to push a particular agenda. I'm here to solve solutions. Casinos are a problem. I don't like the fact that as a society, as Californians, we are basically becoming addicted to having casinos, to having the California Lotto solve our problems. We need to step away from that. We need to get away from dependence on something as negative as gambling. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine.
I have one position on this issue. As your legislator, I would oppose the compact. I would build bipartisan opposition from both Northern California and Southern California legislators. And I would not give up because only one compact had ever been denied before. With educating our legislators about the groundwater issues here in Sonoma County and its impact on all of us, our homes, our agriculture, our businesses, we can build consensus around rejecting this compact. Republicans and Democrats alike, Southern California legislators and Northern California legislators alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. My next question from the audience, and this will be addressed to Mr. Allen. What do you offer students today without of reach tuition and few jobs? What would you propose for higher education?
Last year, I had a bill that was part of the governor's job package that was it was not able to get agreement from the Republicans, and part of that deal that the governor was trying to put together was to get rid of the single sales tax factor, which basically favors out-of-state corporations. It's $1 billion loophole that was agreed to during the era when you needed 2/3 to even get a budget. And so what we've done this year is craft a bill called the Middle Class Scholarship Act. And what this bill will do is close that corporate tax loophole. I'm a co-author of it, and devote that money directly to tuition reduction for our UC students, our college students, and community college students. We estimate that it would reduce tuition by 2/3 if we were able to close that loophole.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong.
Back in the 50s and 60s, California was #1 in education, and I would love to see us go back to that position. And I know I keep harping on it. State and county owned banks. Okay, I already talked about. Let me bring out another revenue stream for us. If we legalize marijuana, that's a whole new ballgame. We can we can, take control of that and make a lot of money off of it to hopefully give our students a free education in the UC system or the state. We can get there. We just have to see past the prejudices. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson?
As far as education, we need to do something about it. There's a lot of solutions out there. My idea is basically cap credit card rates at 20%, have 25% of the finance fees go to local schools. That would raise billions of dollars. Another idea, especially in our area, is we have 46 school districts. We need to cut that down. I was talking to the president of SSU a couple of weeks ago. He brought up the point that we throw somebody in prison, costs $42,000 a year. We pay our, as opposed to $7,000 per student. That's nuts. Yeah. I mean, where's our priorities? Wouldn't it be nice if we paid our teachers as much as we paid prison guards? I mean, wouldn't that be a nice concept? We have to figure out ways. Bottom line is, California is the leader of this country. This country is the leader of the world. If we don't have a decent education, what's going to happen? We're going to have a few people that are educated, and who are they going to count on? Who are they going to be with? They're going to be with the uneducated and the unemployed. We have to step up as a society. We have to step up as a people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine.
Yeah, as a graduate of the California State University system and as a former chairman of the California State Student Association way back in the 90s, I am a believer in California's master plan for higher education and was fighting for the same things that we continue to fight for today. And it's very disappointing that we haven't been able to make sure that every qualified graduate from high school has a seat at the CSU or the UC, or even now at our California community colleges. And there are tax reforms that we can do, like an oil severance tax that so many other states have that California doesn't have. And yet we don't have the competent leadership in the legislature to bring people together to say, well, if Alaska has it, then California should be able to fund our education this way as well. We need to change the leadership and change the status quo in Sacramento so that we can actually work together, display leadership, restore trust in the voters so that they're going to reinvest in California by increasing revenues as the governor has asked us to do, and actually provide a seat in higher ed for everyone who's qualified. And I think that's the most important thing, talking about everyone who's qualified. We need to make sure that every student in K-12 can graduate from high school with a diploma that means something and gets them in college or career skills if they'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, when I went through Fresno State, there was essentially no tuition. I went to University of Washington to get my graduate degree, and they even waived my out-of-state tuition and gave me a grant which paid my living expenses for 4 years. I would use an oil severance tax to fund education. I would use a real millionaire's tax that goes after that 1% who are hogging up 93% of the growth of our GNP, and also the 20% of people who are just plain rich. After $1 million or so, you're not going to miss what tax money we take away from you. There was one more source of income, as this escaped me for a second, for the schools. The money is there, and we can get it. We just have to have the courage to get it and stop being afraid of the word tax. We got to make things work in California. They worked before.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, Ms. Wong. California Proposition 13 is recognized as a cause of revenue loss, especially on commercial property causing unfair costs. Are you for repealing Proposition 13?
Again, absolutely not. I'm an anti-tax person and an anti-budget cut person, anti-social program cut person. California has to become a business if it wants to stay in business. Everyone, we need to move beyond the box and come up with ways to create money. State-owned bank, the marijuana. Oh, okay, so if we legalize marijuana, then we can release all those prisoners whom we spend $42,000 on each year, right? There's your money. So no on Prop 13, or repealing it.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson?
As far as Prop 13, my mother-in-law's here, and she has a house that she's lived in since 1976. And if I even came close to saying yes, she would shoot me. And I like being around, so guess what? I am against changing Prop 13 for houses. As far as corporations, yeah, that's something we seriously need to look at. We need to figure out what works. The biggest problem for California is we need to balance environment versus business growth. We have to figure out kind of a middle ground. In Marin, they just shot themselves in the foot by basically telling George Lucas to kiss a multi-million-dollar project that would benefit the area for years goodbye because of silliness around business and also excessive environmentalism. We need to balance it out. I'm for fixing things. I'm for creative ways of having money, of growing our issues. What's happening is we're basically taking a look at the issues, the budget problems, and basically say we either have to raise taxes or we have to turn around and basically fire everybody. There's a third choice that nobody ever really talks about. That's creating more income for the state to begin with, getting more job growth for the state to come in here. All right? A lot of the ideas that I have as far as health care, part of it, if it passes, you would turn around and get commissions. If we turn around and basically had California broker all the health insurance, bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. How about you, Mr. Levine?
Yes, in an era where you'd think that everything should be out on the table to debate, the legislature put Prop 25 on the ballot and made the promise to voters. If you empower us to balance a budget with just a majority rather than 2/3, we promise that we won't pay ourselves if we don't pass a balanced budget on time. And what happened was last year, they didn't pass a balanced budget on time. The pay was withheld. And then they finally passed a real budget, even though there were trigger cuts 6 months later because it wasn't really balanced. They had their pay withheld for 2 weeks. Now, the legislative leadership is suing the controller to stop him from holding their pay back if they don't balance the budget. They promised voters they wouldn't get paid if they balanced the budget on time, and here they are suing to get paid on time if they don't balance the budget. They'll talk about it being a separation of powers issue. This is an abrogation of the trust built between voters and their legislators. And until we clean up the ethics in Sacramento, until we clean up the behavior in Sacramento, until we live up to the values that we learned about in civics class in high school, we will never gain the trust back of the voters to allow us to do the things that we want to do, to raise revenue, to spend that money on things like education and the environment that we care so much about. Until we regain the voters' trust, we will never be able to do those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, can I have that question again?
Sure.
Sorry, folks.
Hearing a little grumbling in the audience here.
Yeah.
That's very unseemly of
Don't take it so
Democrats to be
seriously.
grumbling. California Proposition 13 is recognized as a cause of revenue loss, especially on commercial property causing unfair costs. Are you for repealing Proposition 13?
35 years ago when I found 3 acres up in the mountains in Lagunitas that nobody else wanted because it was so inaccessible, I built a little tree house up there, and same year Proposition 13 came into effect. And I couldn't afford to live there without that Proposition 13. And I really applaud it. However, I am for a split roll for businesses because you have Macy's, stores like that, Mervyn's, changing hands using real estate trust as a way to avoid reassessment. So what's happened is that the homeowner who used to pay like 35% of all the property taxes now pays 70% because the businesses are skating on Proposition 13. So that's my answer. I'd like to see a split roll. It was introduced this year and shelved or tabled or whatever the word is, and I hope to bring it up again next year.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen.
I'll give away my age here, but I actually fought Prop 13. I was one of the co-chairs with Eric Konenschaffer when Prop 13 was proposed back in 1978. Having said that, the voters voted for it. My major concern was, besides starving California of the resources it need to make it great, was that it was going to result in a concentration of power in Sacramento, and that's exactly what happened. It also resulted in land use planning that started chasing dollars for big box development. But I would favor now not a repeal of Prop 13, but a split roll where we could preserve the housing for folks who cannot afford to pay a large tax bill because they bought it under certain circumstances for residential property, but certainly to look at properties such as Disneyland that's presently valued at $25 million at 1955 rates. There's extreme examples. There's about 12 permutations about how split roll could be done. It could be done in such a way as to protect apartment house owners. There's different gradations. But the most important thing, and something that Governor Brown has talked about, is returning government back to the people, because one of the worst effects of Prop 13 was this aggregation of power in Sacramento and then trying to govern from 40,000 feet when we need to give more power to local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. This may or may not be the final question. We have 5 more minutes, so if you want a lot of questions, be brief. This is question number 7. What is your stance on AB 2312, the regulation of medical marijuana? If opposed, what is your proposal to establish enforceable oversight? I address this to our medical candidate, Dr. Gunderson.
Actually, one of the things, I've been talking to a lot of the police chiefs around the area, probably about, I don't know, 7 or 8. And that was pretty much one of the first questions I asked them. It's like, well, should we legalize marijuana? And almost all of them, including the sheriff, said, yeah, no problem. The thing that they were worried about is doing it badly, doing it without consulting with the police departments. They're more worried about kind of the residual crime because of marijuana as opposed to somebody getting stoned. So personally, I owned 3 clean and sober houses for a couple years. So I know the negativity of drug use. It basically came down to, I'm for it. It would take a lot of pressure off the system. It would save California a ton of money. And we basically have way more important things to do than to go around and bust people for marijuana. I mean, realistically, most of the people, one time in their life, probably have either known somebody who smoked pot or has smoked pot. Guess what? I've inhaled. Sorry. So, again, I would recommend basically doing away with it. I would absolutely consult with the police because they're the ones that have to deal with the fallout. So primarily, again, anytime you pass a law, it's kind of nice to ask the people it's going to affect the most. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine.
Levine.
I am so sorry.
As a follow-on to the last question, when I was talking about Prop 25, Prop 13 rolled a lot of things into one thing. One was taking money away from local government. The other one was saying a 2/3 requirement for raising revenue, and another one was 2/3 on passing a budget. But on something that's really close to our hearts, we want to make sure that people can age in place. It's a very important public policy in California. We want to make sure that people aren't priced out of their homes because of real estate speculation, and that's something that I think we should keep as Prop 13. On this current question, I support decriminalization of marijuana. We are in an era of scarce resources. Rather than spending thousands of dollars incarcerating people, we need to send that money to our schools to educate people and give people the opportunities to reach their potential in life. If we're chasing after people because of marijuana use, it's not the right use of our resources. As a city council member, I know our police departments are overtaxed as they are with so much work to do. That's certainly true throughout the state. and would relieve a huge burden on our prisons and now with realignment on our jails, so we could use those local dollars on more important things and use those state dollars to spend on education as well.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I support the legalization of marijuana. If you could just grow it, smoke it, have it around like a vegetable in the garden, it would take the dealers take the profit motive out of the marijuana market. There would no longer be the crime. Just let it go. I also support the legalization of all drugs because I have an economic model that I developed 6 years ago that the National Organization of Marijuana approved of, that if you legalize drugs, made them available through drug stores, I'm talking about cocaine, heroin, stuff like that, in pure quality, cut the price down, undercut the street prices, you would drive the dealers totally off the streets. Then you have no salesman for drugs. That's the problem. You have somebody coming up to you and say, hey, buddy, want some drugs? That would be cut out. You get rid of the salesman, you get rid of the crime, get rid of the cartels. But of course the police, that's the last thing they want to get rid of because this is a big money deal for them and the DEA. I think the DEA should be disbanded. Them and the alcohol and tobacco and firearms outfit, after Ruby Ridge, they almost were disbanded, but the Oklahoma City bombing kind of saved their ass. These people are in the way of good law enforcement. And again, marijuana is just a weed and it should be left alone.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen.
Well, I think that everyone agrees that the federal government have made a complete mess of this. Probably the best thing they could do is deregulate it and let the states figure this out individually. My take on it is that I would support the regulation and taxation of marijuana. I do support the medical marijuana law that we have here. I do think it's been commented by other people. It's a terribly confusing situation for law enforcement right now. And also this whole schizophrenic, we're going to let the dispensaries do business, they say, and then a year later they're raiding and taking out the marijuana, and it's really not a coherent policy. So to me, I would say leave it to the states, let California develop its own policy regarding this, but I think regulating and taxing it makes sense. Sometimes we need to learn from history. Prohibition was a colossal failure, and this is another example where we have essentially allowed the cartels and the folks who are basically the illegal element of society profit from a incoherent policy.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong.
I agree with Mr. Easton Brown and Assemblymember Allen. I think legalizing marijuana is just intuitive. People are doing it anyway. What are you going to do? Knock on everybody's door and check if they're smoking pot? I mean, it's just unenforceable. And then plus all the revenues from taxing the marijuana would help us get out of the deficit. And again, releasing all those people out of prison because of drugs. I mean, the drug war doesn't work. We've wasted so much money. We're losing this war, and we need to get out of it. And actually, the drug kingpins, they don't want us to legalize marijuana. Did you know that? Because they'd go out of business. So yeah, definitely decriminalize marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. I think we have time for just one more question. Is that okay with you? Okay. I'm going to combine two cards here at the risk of having Mike Healy object to me as being a compound question. Is Mike in the room? Okay. What will you do to prevent more cuts to IHSS and the proposed shift of care from families to managed care? And secondary to that, how do you stand on the single-payer health plan? And I'll address this to Mr. Levine.
I think, the easy question, well, they're both easy for me, but I support single-payer health care. I think one of the components of supporting single-payer health care is controlling costs. I think that's one of the lost opportunities of health care reform that we've had so far. On IHSS, we save about $8 for every dollar spent and invested in IHSS in our state. It would be a huge mistake not to continue an IHSS program permitting people to live in their homes while they're provided with some services that help them live in dignity and live in a place where they're comfortable. That saves the state, again, $8 for every dollar invested. I think another component of that is that we really need to respect the workers at IHSS. They're a part of that program. They're providing that dignity for loved ones, our family members, our neighbors and friends. And this is something that we all value highly. So we have to look at what the opportunity cost is if we were to cut it, and it's far too expensive. Now, of course, we've talked a lot about some tax reforms that may open up some more money in our state. Talked about maybe some decriminalization, some prison reform that would open up some opportunities in our state. Restoring trust in our government so that if we ask voters to increase revenue, that maybe they would trust the legislature to do the right thing. Those are ways that we can help make sure that we have the revenue to really budget for our values in California.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown.
Yes. I was disappointed last month when the legislature voted down single payer. I was really outraged when the Marin County supervisors cut back on home health care and spend $250,000 on themselves each year. And here's 5 people that can't even tie their shoes without hiring a consultant. And they just spend money wildly because the tax base in Marin is so high that the tax money is there, so why not spend it? And so they got these ridiculous programs, including the Marin Electrical Authority, which is, there's no green energy there. They spent our pothole money on SMART, $14 million, and my street is full of potholes. I live on the same street as Steve Kinsey, but he lives at the beginning of the street, so he doesn't see the potholes. But these people are so arrogant. And of course, the supervisors are the least democratic of any elected body in California because of the way they're organized. But anyway, yes, single payer, and yes, more money for home health care services because, you get what a valuable bargain you're getting for the money. And I can't believe they cut this thing out so they can spend more money on their cars and their lunches.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Allen?
I'm very proud to be a co-author of SB 810, Mark Leno's bill. Prior to that, it was Sheila Kuehl's bill. I've been a supporter of single payer for over 30 years just because it's the one way that essentially we can manage costs and reduce administrative costs dramatically. Some estimate as much by 30%. Unfortunately, it never made it out of the Senate. I was prepared to lead floor debate on it on the Assembly side. It never made it out of the Senate, and it was very unfortunate. I think, unfortunately, what happened is that some of the Democrats voted against it because they knew that Governor Brown might even sign it, where they were willing to pass it under Schwarzenegger. So it's sort of cynical what happened, in my opinion. Regarding the IHSS, absolutely. I've negotiated for IHSS workers. I understand the program really well. I support them. There was a very unfortunate comment made by our governor. He kind of had an Arnold Schwarzenegger moment. He told the legislature that we had to man up and start making cuts in this area. And that's where we're balking, because this is an area where we disagree that essentially this is money well spent. It keeps people from going into nursing homes, convalescent care. It's a very valuable program. And so there is disagreement between the Democratic governor, the Democratic legislature on this particular issue, and others that we'll be battling out over the next few months. But absolutely, I'm a huge supporter of IHSS.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wong.
Again, I'm probably beating a dead horse. California, we need to make money and not, tax the people who pay the most, the middle class and the poor. We have to find ways to bring ourselves out of debt, and cutting programs that's cheating to me. That's the easy way out. Your politicians aren't working hard enough if all they're saying is tax and cut programs. I'm sorry. They need to, again, think outside the box. So no, it shouldn't be cut. Single payer health care, absolutely. My parents are on Medicare, and thank God they are, because it'd be a mess if they weren't. And so I totally agree. Everyone in California should be entitled to full health care. Insurance should not be tied to health care, because then it's about money and not about you or your health. It's not about your best interests. It's about their bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson.
Well, as a doctor, obviously I'm in favor of single health care. I mean, it'd be kind of silly for me not to. I think it's going to be a long road before it actually shows up and, you know, it's actually there. I have a couple things in mind before that. One of the things, again, I'd like to turn around and have California broker all health insurance. That would basically, if you turn around and a small family member or small business, they go get to Kaiser and to get a health quote, guess what? It's massively expensive. But if California is brokering all the health insurance and they go, guess what? They're part of a group of 37 million customers. They're going to get a gigantic discount. Also, if a family turns around and saves $2,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 a year off of their health insurance, I don't think they'd mind if California got a 5% commission off of that. That would raise hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for other health care to save programs like this. Another thing, again, have California turn around and certify Canadian websites. So you go online and you save a couple $1,000s a year off of your meds. Have the websites turn around and kick back 5% off of each sale to the state of California. Again, it's a way of raising money. We have to think outside of the box. Another way of thinking outside of the box is 5% of the people basically take up 25% of the health care. If we turn around and spend wisely on that 5%, if we monitor them, if we take care of them, if we're proactive, we can turn around and make a gigantic difference.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. We've now reached the moment where we concluded the question section. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of the candidates, starting with Mr. Allen, to give their closing statements. And I would remind the candidates that we are very much interested in, now that we've heard a lot of the goals you intend to achieve in the legislature, how you think you will work with the current legislature to achieve these goals. And maybe you might ask or respond to, do you think you can work with the current legislature to achieve these goals? Mr. Allen.
It's important to remember that with term limits, the best that you can do, like for myself, would be to able to serve another 2 terms, another 4 years. And that next year, there'll probably be as many as 40 new legislators in the Assembly. Over half the Assembly will be newbies. I have the reputation in the Assembly already as being a leader, and also they call me the adult. A lot of the younger members come and talk to me. I counsel them, and I'm hopeful that as the new group comes in, I'll be there. I want to continue my job, continue leading in California, and basically try to, hopefully with open primaries, we're going to end up in a situation where maybe we'll start getting some more bipartisan results. I am very proud of my bill for state hospitals last year that got unanimous Republican and Democratic support for safer state hospitals. I'm very proud of that. But those are too infrequent of the situations. So we need to work for greater bipartisanship and also more continuity. And a lot of things that are wrong with Sacramento, we've inflicted on ourselves with some of the, quote, reforms we made over the years that haven't worked out. So I do support, for the new legislators in the future, the longer term limits of 12 years where you can be in one house and actually gather some expertise and get good at the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wong?
I would take the time to get to know the fellow legislators and talk to them about the various issues and obviously push the agenda that I gave you for these last 2 hours. Because it's not what you know, but it's who you know. And I would definitely push for bipartisanship and come up with win-win solutions for everyone. Not a compromise, but win-win, so that everybody has a piece of the pie. And yeah, I would just take time to get to know everyone and persuade them to see things my way.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Dr. Gunderson.
Is this the last question, or do we have a...
No, this is your closing statement.
Oh, this is a closing statement. Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't mean to confuse you.
I'll hang out for another couple hours. The really interesting thing about the state legislature is, you know, you ask people whether or not it's the system's broken, and pretty much everybody says, yeah, it's totally broken. the people that we're trying to place, Jared Huffman has basically done a really good job of stepping up. He's done over 60 bills. If there's somebody who knows how to get it done to create excellence, that's him. He's kind of like the template. There's a lot of other state legislatures that are basically mediocre. They don't step up. They basically go for the safe bills. I've already gone to Jared's staff and invited them all to be part of my staff if I win. Hopefully they say yes. Of course, depends on whether or not he ends up in Congress. There is the ability to create change in Sacramento. We can do it. Again, we are the leader of this country. If we have a vision, it will force every place else in this country and around the world to pay attention. I've talked to people in Canada, and they say, yeah, California's the leader. Everybody keys off of us. There is a path of excellence. My name is Dr. H. Christian Gunderson. Vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunderson. Mr. Levine.
First of all, thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and thank you to the Southern Sonoma Democrats for hosting this event. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to introduce myself to you. When I started along the path of running for assembly, I met with a statewide office holder, and I asked them, does it matter in a state built for dysfunction if you just change the personalities? And their response was, even Willie Brown was able to get Republicans to vote for him to be speaker. And if we're going to elect more than half of the assembly new members, they're probably feeling a lot like we are, that the system's broken, but if you change the personalities, you can change the culture. They're going to be looking for leadership, and the leadership they're looking for, just like I feel, it's not the leadership that's suing the controller for their paychecks, not the leadership that was hiding their office budgets instead of facing a $20 billion budget deficit, but leadership that really reaches for the highest ideal that we all look for when we think about the potential of the Golden State. I'm excited, hopeful, not naive, but optimistic about the future of our state, of reaching out not just to the 40 new members of our legislature, but finding the common ground that I have with legislators that are a lot different than we think we are, but probably have a lot more in common than we'd imagine. For example, we have a wonderful agricultural base here in the North Bay. 25% of the Bay Area's dairy comes from Sonoma and West Marin. And you know what? We probably have more in common with the agricultural communities in other parts of our state that look a little bit red to us. We can build so much common ground in California if we just open our eyes, raise our level of ethics, reach to our highest ideals, and work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, as far as leadership goes, I'm the first progressive Democrat ever to be elected president of Marin United Taxpayers, a 35-year-old organization that was created to push through Proposition 13, pretty right-wing conservative organization. Being able to be in a leadership role with this group and still maintain my integrity has been a fantastic voyage. Also, the 99% declaration. By transcending the culture wars and dealing with fiscal responsibility, it really hasn't been that difficult. Now, California is one of the largest economies in the world. We can lean on the banks to do business within our borders, to modify underwater mortgages, and to suspend and reduce student loans. We can expand our state infrastructure bank to create infrastructure jobs, much like FDR. We can seize the foreclosed homes that are blighting our neighborhoods, threatening our public order. We can use the infrastructure bank to fix up these homes, and rent them out, and even rent to own to families at affordable prices. We can tax the 1% of our population who are receiving 93% of our growth in GNP. We can impose a financial transaction tax of 0.5% and fight to restore the shelter of bankruptcy for mortgages, student loans, and consumer debt. We can pay Californians for the mineral resources that belong to them with an oil and gas severance tax. We can charge the hugely profitable oil companies that do business in California an excess profits tax. We can shut down the failed war on drugs. We can break up the predatory prison industrial complex and stand up to Obama's hypocritical war on marijuana. We can fund education. We can fund single payer. We can fund infrastructure, roads, bridges, schools. We can fund Planned Parenthood. It has to be a fallacy that businesses, it has been shown to be a fallacy that businesses will move out of state if they're taxed.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to compliment the candidates. I really didn't know any of you before I came here tonight. It's been a real pleasure sitting here and being your moderator. I want to compliment you for being so civilized. I also want to compliment you for being not only thoughtful, but thought-provoking. It will be a very difficult decision for the voters to try to figure out who to vote for here. You all displayed a great deal of intelligence, and there was no acrimony, which I really appreciate. So thank you very much. Let's give them a big hand.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Leroy Lounibos. Thank you, Wes Malaspino, for timekeeping, and Jim Peterson for moderating the sound. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, our club usually meets the third Wednesday of each month over at the Senior Nutrition Site Clubhouse here in Petaluma. Hope to see you there, and we'll have our May meeting, and then stay tuned for our big July 14th barbecue. So again, thanks for coming, and thanks for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Petaluma Community Access.